Life has a cruel way of dragging the past back into your present, even when you think it's long gone. I never expected that a simple cleaning job would lead me to a horrifying discovery about my ex and a dangerous plan that threatened my son. So, I'm not usually the kind of person to spill my life online, but this is something else. I'm still reeling from what happened last week and I need to get it off my chest. I'm Jocelyn, 40, a single mom, and honestly just trying to make it work every day. I've been hustling as a cleaner for a while now, scrubbing floors, dusting high ceilings, you name it. It's not glamorous, but it keeps food on the table for my 9-year-old son, Oliver, and that's all that matters. The job gives me plenty of time to think, to plan, and sometimes to worry. I usually work in regular homes, nothing too fancy, but last week I got this new job through my agency. The place was in this upscale neighborhood that looked straight out of one of those reality shows, the kind where people have their own wine cellars and marble statues in the foyer. I remember rolling my eyes when I came, thinking, great, another house with more rooms than people, but hey, work is work. The house was empty when I arrived. Typical. Most of my clients are never home, they just leave the key somewhere discreet. This time it was under the doormat along with a handwritten note on the marble countertop. The note had the usual polite instructions: please clean the kitchen, vacuum the bedrooms, and make sure to dust the picture frames. I tucked it into my pocket and got started. As I moved through the house, I noticed how pristine everything was. The countertops gleamed, the floors were spotless, and honestly it made me wonder why they even needed a cleaner. I tried to shrug off the nerves that were creeping in. This place was giving me weird vibes. The decor felt oddly familiar, like a place I'd been in a dream but couldn't quite remember. Halfway through dusting, I muttered to myself, what is this place? A museum? The silence was getting to me, so I called Oliver. Hey, bud. How was school? I asked, keeping my voice light. Good. We had our art class. I painted a spaceship. His voice was full of excitement, and it made me smile. For a moment I forgot about the strange feeling that had been gnawing at me since I got here. Sounds awesome, Ollie. Save it for me, okay? I needed that little pep talk from my boy. It reminded me why I put up with weird houses and demanding clients. Soon afterward I made my way upstairs, figuring I'd tackle the bedrooms next. Each step felt heavier, like my body was picking up on something my brain hadn't caught onto yet. I started in the guest room, nothing strange there. Then I moved on to the master bedroom, and that's when everything fell apart. On the nightstand, staring right back at me, was a framed photo of Oliver. My Oliver. I couldn't breathe. It was like my heart had stopped and the world was spinning. I walked closer, slowly, like I was in some nightmare where everything was in slow motion. I picked up the frame with shaking hands. What the eye whispered, my voice barely audible. It was him, all right. Oliver's goofy grin, the blue paint streaked across his cheek from last year's school fair. I remember that day like it was yesterday. But why was his picture here, in this stranger's house? Panic set in. My mind went to dark places. Was someone stalking us? Did something happen to him? My stomach twisted. I felt dizzy, desperate to understand. I sank onto the edge of the bed, clutching the frame as if it held the answer to all my questions. I needed to stay calm, but it was like the room was closing in on me. I could barely think straight. Who lived here? And why did they have a picture of my son? I couldn't stop staring at that picture of Oliver. My head was spinning, but I knew I had to pull myself together. I set the frame down and started looking around the room, my eyes darting from one thing to the next. That's when I spotted more photos, ones that hit like a punch to the gut. There he was, Tristan, my ex, grinning in every frame like he had it all figured out. I hadn't seen Tristan in almost 9 years, not since he walked out on us. I could still see him standing in the doorway of our tiny apartment, bags in hand, his eyes cold and distant. I can't do this anymore, Jocelyn, he had said, his voice flat and unfeeling. Oliver was just a baby, crying in the background, but Tristan didn't even look back. Just like that? You're leaving us, I had asked, my voice breaking, but he just shrugged, his face hardening. You'll figure it out, he said, turning away without a hint of remorse. And then he was gone, vanishing into thin air without so much as a goodbye. I'd spent sleepless nights wondering where he was and why he'd left, but after a while I stopped caring. We didn't need him then, and we sure as hell didn't need him now. But now it was like he'd been hiding in plain sight, living in this mansion with some glamorous woman, his new wife, judging by the wedding photo on the dresser. She was all dressed up, looking like she'd stepped straight off a movie set, and there was Tristan, holding her close like he was the king of the world. My stomach churned, and anger bubbled up inside me. I stormed out of the bedroom, pacing the hallway, trying to make sense of it all. Unbelievable, I muttered to myself, my voice shaking. He knew. He had to know I'd be here. My thoughts were a mess, each one nastier than the last. Just when I thought I couldn't feel any worse, I saw the note again, crumpled in my pocket. There was another message at the back, which I most likely missed reading the first time. My eyes zeroed in on the last line, scrawled in Tristan's unmistakable handwriting. I hear you're still working these lowly jobs. Make sure the place is spotless. Wouldn't want Oliver living in filth. My blood boiled. This wasn't just a cleaning job, it was a setup. He wanted to humiliate me, to remind me where I stood in his eyes. I clenched my fists and gritted my teeth. He thinks he's so clever, doesn't he? I whispered furiously. I could practically see him smirking, thinking he'd won, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. I wasn't the scared, helpless woman he left behind. I had built a life from the ground up without him, and there was no way I'd let him waltz back in and make me feel small. Determined not to let him get the best of me, I marched back to the kitchen, scanning the spotless counters with a mischievous grin. "All right, Tristan, two can play this game," I muttered under my breath. I swapped the salt with the sugar, twisted the caps back on, and moved to the laundry room. "Oops," I whispered as I poured a good splash of vinegar into his expensive-looking detergent bottle. It wasn't much, just enough to wreak some havoc in his perfect little life. Before I left, I scribbled a quick note and tucked it under the picture of Oliver. "You might have all the money in the world, but that doesn't buy love or respect. You abandoned your son once, and you'll never have the chance to hurt him again. Keep your distance, or I'll make sure you regret it." I locked the door, feeling both relieved and defiant. My hands were still shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. I was proud. Proud that I hadn't let him reduce me to the woman he once left behind. I had stood my ground, and for the first time I felt like I had taken a piece of my power back. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a call from the agency. "Jocelyn, we got a complaint from the client," the manager said, her voice tinged with concern. "Apparently the laundry smelled odd and some of the food tasted off." I chuckled, trying to keep my tone casual. "Must have been an off day," I said lightly, though inside I was savoring every word. The agency didn't push it further, and I knew Tristan must have been livid. But I didn't care. Later that night, as Oliver and I snuggled on the couch, he leaned into me, his laughter filling the room as he watched his favorite show. I could feel the warmth of his small body against mine, a comforting reminder of why I did everything I did. "Mom," he said, looking up at me with those big, curious eyes, "do you think we'll ever need more people in our team?" His question caught me off guard, but I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Maybe someday, Ollie. But right now it's just us, and that's pretty perfect, don't you think?" He nodded, grinning as he leaned his head back against my shoulder. "Yeah, just us. We're the best team." I kissed the top of his head, feeling a rush of love and pride. "The best team," I whispered, my heart full.